Warning, history is repeating. Bitcoin has recently fallen into quicksand right here on this chart. The last time we fell into quicksand was 2022. It took 539 days to recover. The previous time, 2018, fell into quicksand right here. Took 364 days to recover. The time before that, 2014, fell into quicksand right here. It took 490 days to recover. However, on this chart right here is a secret clue that will tell us how long we're going to stay inside quicksand this time, and if there's any clue that we are about to break out of quicksand, some anomaly, something that has never happened before. I want to cover all the latest with the quicksand, all of the facts, and you're going to leave with complete clarity on what to do with these facts, what I'm doing with these facts, and what would have to happen in order for me to change my mind. Let's get into it. Recently, many of you have been randomly unsubscribed from my channel, and missing just one video in a market like this can cost you big time. So stop what you're doing, look down, and make sure you are subscribed. So here we are, Bitcoin US dollar index, and today we are on the weekly chart. On the weekly chart, we've got the Gaussian channel on our chart. You can just simply go to your indicators, type in Gaussian channel, pull it up, and what you will see is something very similar to this, where there are 3 lines to the Gaussian channels and 2 colors. The 2 colors are easy. Green means good. The bull market is green. Green is good. Red pretty much represents the bear market. Every single time on the weekly chart that we are red is the worst part of the cycle. So 2014, when we were red, this was during the bottom of the bear market. 2018, when we were red, pretty much the bottom of that bear market. 2022, when we were red, pretty much the bottom of that bear market. And we are red here. Does that mean that this is pretty much the bottom of this bear market? So there's a big secret clue right off the bat that I want to address a little bit later in this video. Do not forget about this red piece right here. I just covered the red pieces, and we can't make this up. Every single time it's been at the bottom of markets. So what is going on right now? Are we at the bottom of the market? But let's really dig into the quicksand, because there's another secret clue right on this chart right here, and I don't know if you really picked up on it, but we're looking to see how long potentially the quicksand will last. Now, let's first get into what the quicksand is. We mentioned that the Gaussian channel has the top line, the middle line, and the bottom line. Okay, all 3 act as support and resistance, and the middle line is our median line. And what the quicksand is if you notice, during bull markets, the price action happens above the Gaussian channel. Okay, and when we start to dip our toe into the Gaussian channel with a full candle body closing inside the Gaussian channel, that is what represents quicksand. In other words, if you've ever dipped your toe into quicksand, you're probably not watching this video because you're probably dead. Quicksand is nothing to mess with. As soon as you dip your toe in, it pulls you down, right? It pulls you down. It's sort of like standing on the shore of the beach and the waves are splashing at your feet, and the sand just keeps going down. Your feet are falling further and further and further into the sand as the water rinses over your feet. That's exactly what is happening in the quicksand. So when we get into quicksand, like we did in 2018, is 364 days to recover. In other words, 364 days of price action that is either inside of the Gaussian channel or below. In other words, 364 days of terrible moves for Bitcoin. You don't want to be a part of it. It's at the time of Bitcoin where we just go down and down and down, or sideways. So 2014 was no different. As soon as we actually dipped our toe into the quicksand, meaning we had our first body of a candle close inside, it was back in 2014, it was 490 days to recover. In other words, 490 days of being either inside of the quicksand or below it. In other words, still horrifically bad for Bitcoin. So we've got 3 data points here that we want to cover. All of them are the Quicksand, and I want to dig into the facts that we see happening right now. Right now for the Quicksand, I want to address how long we could be in Quicksand, but I also want to address what is going on with this red piece here. Is this a sign of something odd going on, some peculiar facts happening that could really change things up? Because what you see happening here, this change to red, is unlike any change to red we have seen ever in Bitcoin. So that's what I want to dig into. You can see right away that this price action did stay above the Quicksand. We did dip our toe into the Quicksand briefly in April, but again, in order to get into the Quicksand, you need a full body inside, not just a wick, right? A full body. And some people may say, well, how about this? This was still the bear market recovering before we really truly entered a bull, right? We truly entered a bull right around this area where we finally broke out of that long-term market structure. You could see the market structure from May 22 coming all the way across to July 23. That market structure, as soon as we broke it with the candle of October 23, that's when the market really started to move into the bull market there. Okay, so what you can see is once we did move into the bull market, we stayed above this trend line, okay, inside the Gaussian channel. And this candle in November 17th, 2025, that was the first one that closed inside the Quicksand. That's the Quicksand candle right there, okay? So what you can see is the price action was slightly different, right? In other instances, we had price action really far above the Gaussian channel in prior years and prior cycles. And then in 2022, it was pretty far above, but there were times that we struggled. And then our most recent cycle, we didn't have any times where we were truly really far above the Gaussian channel, but we did dip our toe inside the Gaussian channel. Make no mistake about it, November 2025. Recently, many of you have been randomly unsubscribed from my channel, and missing just one video in a market like this can cost you big time. So stop what you're doing, look down, and make sure you are subscribed. So what's going on with this red, and how much longer could we be inside the Quicksand? So what I want to do is mathematically look at this. We've got 3 data points, 2014, 18, and 2022. We have a certain amount of days for 14, certain amount of days for 18, certain amount of days for 22 of how long we stayed inside. If we take the average of that, it's 464 days. In other words, we've got 12 years of data. It suggests on average we stayed in the Quicksand 464 days. So it may be in our best interest to decide where that candle is that we first entered and project out 464 days so we can get a rough idea of when we will be out of the Quicksand. By the way, we're looking at the time we're out of the Quicksand, meaning, let's take a look. 2022, we entered the Quicksand here and we got out of the Quicksand here. That's when we finally rose above the channel. And yes, we had a little bit more recovery and then we moved into the bull. In other words, once we move out of the Quicksand, that's when the bull really takes form. Look at 2018. 2018 entered the Quicksand right here, May 28th, 2018. 364 days later, we finally got out back in May 19, and that's when the bull run was underway. Same with 2014. 490 days we entered here, 490 days later we were over here, bull run was starting. So we're looking to understand possibly when that next bull run could start, because you probably want nothing more than that. You're tired of price going down, you're tired of price going sideways. You just want to know when the next bull run is, and we will roughly go out 464 days, and that should bring us around the territory that we are looking for. And we're looking at roughly, this sort of January, February, March time frame. That's when we're looking at of 2027. January, February, March, sort of that Q1, call it early 2027. We're looking at early 2027 as being a possible opportunity to get back out of the quicksand for the first time in quite a while. So we will look at that territory. Now let's try to make sense of this red here. What you notice is that with the Gaussian channel, what you typically see is when we've had prior market cycles, we spent more time being bullish, not really close to the Gaussian channel. In other words, when we crashed down towards the Gaussian channel, we had a long way to crash, and then subsequently the red came a little bit later. In other words, what we did in 2022 was we started to mix things up a little bit, right? Things started to get a little bit out of balance, meaning we had our bottom of our market. We had an enormous rally, which was really unorthodox. It was not sustainable. And that crashed us down just to our double bottom. And from there, it took us a while to recover from all of that mess. And then it took so long to recover that the bull market was almost done. And we just exploded in price so high that it actually had a double top. We exploded so high that we needed a little recovery, but time was up. The top was already in, and that was all she wrote. And this next market cycle was a little bit unorthodox still. We had that double top, which led us to a double bottom, which led us to a prolonged recovery to finally get into a bull. We got into the bull market a little bit late, October 2023-ish, and it just was so weak. It was the weakest bull run we had ever had, and it wasn't even close. If you look at the percentage of this bull run to the past bull run, it was just a sizable difference. In fact, each bull run is getting weaker and weaker by multiple magnitudes. We've discussed that at length. But with that, it leads us to this red that we're seeing here. Now, this could be true to its form, meaning, hey, maybe we are right now near our bottom of our market. We have to look at both sides of it. Like the one side is like, look, based on the facts, every time we switched to red in this Gaussian channel, we were pretty much near the bottom of the market. So we cannot say that that's not an option. It's definitely an option. We'll put it out there. It's definitely an option. But what I think is happening, and this is less based on facts, but more based on mathematically the sizable difference between this rally and the priors, is we just didn't rally as far above the Gaussian channel, which is why when we crashed into the Gaussian channel, it sort of confused the Gaussian channel. And the Gaussian channel, because it didn't have so far to drop to get in there, we turned red pretty quickly. And that's what we see happening here, where the move is still pretty new, but we just didn't have far to crash from the top. So it sort of threw the Gaussian channel off and sort of confused it a bit. That's what I believe is going on with this red. You can see similar things happening with the 3-day death cross, the 4-day death cross. Those things are moving averages. And when you have price that doesn't get so far above the moving averages can cross a lot earlier than they typically do if you don't have price action so far above the moving averages. So that is one theory that I am examining in different charts. But let's get to what you've been waiting for. Out of all of these facts, what should you be doing based on the facts? Based on these facts should keep you very level-headed. It tells you basically that you shouldn't be buying Bitcoin during a bear market. You shouldn't be buying Bitcoin during the quicksand, right? You should be trying to buy during the golden zone. And the key is when to know when that is. But the other key to keep in mind, based on all the facts that we discussed, is like, hey, early next year is probably when the next bull run could start. So it just puts your mind at ease. It lets you understand the big picture. Patience is the name of the game, and over trading is what destroys most portfolios. So keep all of that in mind. What am I doing with this information? I'm just staying level-headed. There's really nothing that rattles me in markets ever. I am not trading like everybody else. I'm in my own weird little box where I just look at the tops of the markets and the bottom of the markets. And that's what I trade. That's what I study. That's what I like. That's what I find interesting. The day to day, the week to week, the month to month, I find almost amusing. I look at it as like a sitcom because you can see in the comments of our videos, you know, everybody goes from, you know, really depressed to really excited, back to depressed, back to really excited. And that changes as many times as they change their underwear. So, you know, that sort of thing I find entertaining. But what am I doing with this information? I'm chilling. If you want to know my exact strategy, you get my Bitcoin bottom blueprint, because there's very specific charts that are very close to triggering, and we're going to be making decisions very, very soon. So you need to know that's exactly how I'm trading, is that course, the Bitcoin bottom blueprint. So make sure you scoop that up. But that's what I'm doing. But just remain level-headed. Everything will be fine. Tilt your phone to the side and subscribe.